And that was God only knows how many years ago. Hi, Sam.
It's amusing to me that I chose what all the other kids around me in middle school and high school did. They chose Spanish.
That was smarter. You know,
It way
before the internet, I was down in Los Angeles. Alexa, stop. I was down in Los Angeles and I was in a neighborhood getting gas, trying to ask the attendant for directions. And I didn't speak Spanish and he
right.
didn't speak English. And I was like, why did I take French in high school?
That's it. I didn't realize it until my son took Spanish in high school.
Hmm.
And we're driving down the highway, and he says, "Dad, is there any Mexican radio stations?" And I thought, "Oh, fuck. I could have had all the Mexican radio stations I wanted in high school, and because they're all over the place in Los Angeles,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and so that's where you immerse yourself. But there
Uh-huh.
was no French radio, no
No,
French TV, nothing.
we should have all moved to Quebec, I guess.
Well, that
And that's not quite the same, but almost. It's a dialect and there are differences, but oh, it is what it is. Happy birthday, Sam. Happy belated birthday.
Happy birthday to you, Mark. Hey, Jack, Mark and I are twins.
Yeah, we were born on the same day.
I see the resemblance. It's
Both of our sets of parents had good taste or whatever.
Umami.
It's nice to see you, Sam.
Hey, I was doing a little bit of arithmetic, the amount that I can still do. And I
Uh-huh.
think I started at Siebel, must have been like, what, 27 or 28 years ago.
My God. Well, I started in 98, 98, I think is when it
And I
was.
started in 97.
Okay, so we're a year apart. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's Siebel. What's that?
It's Oracle, you know,
Oh,
basically. We were
It was
bought
a
by
spin
Oracle.
out and then a spin back in. Yeah.
It's like everybody pretty much that was hired at Siebel came from Oracle, and then Oracle bought us back. It, you know, but we said we were IBM based, but whatever.
Well, the part that was IBM was you and I had to
DB2.
wear a suit every day.
yeah.
Remember?
That's IBM.
For like 7 years, I wore a suit every
In
single day.
Silicon Valley, we were the only software company where people wore suits basically every day, including the programmers. Yeah.
That's
No,
right.
but I was a field engineer and I still wore a suit. You had to
And it
get
was years before they let the programmers and software engineers not wear suits, but the managers
Oh,
still
well,
did.
yeah, it was like towards the end, I would say 2004, maybe, when we finally decided that engineers could wear just khakis and
Well,
button-up shirts or
after
polo
a while,
shirts.
too many people came on just for the ride. And my saying at the time was, "This ain't your daddy's Siebel." You know,
No, it
it had
wasn't the
completely
same.
changed.
Yeah, it wasn't the same. No.
I was
I
in
remember getting, I remember Tom firing people at company meetings because their Blackberries would ring while he was speaking.
I was in IBM in 66 and 67.
Wow, that was when I was born. Those were good years.
You're just babies.
Oh, oh.
What did you
Jack,
work
to
on?
most of the world is babies to you now, Jack.
Yeah, well, that's the point. I'm one of those fossils circling the drain, so to speak.
I'm
Oh.
curious, what were you working on at 67 at IBM?
OS 360.
Ah, nice.
No kidding. I never knew that about you, Jack.
It's we didn't have CD-ROMs or ROMs or for that matter RAMs in those days. We had core memory,
Mhm.
these little tiny ferrite O-rings that they wired stitched together And in those days, a 360 with 128K core was a
Wow.
big machine. And that,
So
you
what could you
know,
do on
well,
multiply
n-
with a
you,
It
calculator or what?
was assembler in those days.
well, it was OS 360 Basic Assembler Language, OS 360 BAL. That's what we were trained in.
Mhm.
And when McDonnell Douglas had three of them, and I was stationed in Santa Monica, so when one of them would go down, I was called out to go, and they eventually just gave me an office at McDonnell Douglas, right? You know, so when they go down, what you do is you go and you remember it had those red and blue paddles on the front switches, and the IMSI computer was designed to look just like a 360.
Nice.
Yep.
I had two
And
of them.
and so you had to flip some of those paddles and look at what the lights did, and then based on that, you did something else. And you also, what it had a habit of doing is when it would crash, it would vomit over at the printer and give you this foot high
Dump.
printout, and you had to go
Tick, tick, tick,
to,
tick, 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 tick,
well, it
tick,
was
tick,
way
tick, tick, tick.
faster than that,
It's a core
but
dump,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was a core dump, and you had to go to this location, read that, and take that, and go to that location, read that, and go to that location and read that, and that was your hint as to where the failure was. And then what you would do is you would go in and open these big, huge swinging doors. There's all of these cards. Now remember, we didn't have chips in those days, but what they called chips were little postage stamp sized ceramic wafers with little metal cans over them, little metal covers over them. And if you pop the lid, there would be 6 whole transistors in there. That was a chip. And so they had millions of these cards with these so-called chips. And if it was a register, what you would do is you would pull the register next to it out, swap them, and see if the lights moved to the other. And if that was it, then you knew which card to replace. That's basically what you did. Or sometimes you couldn't tell what it was, so what you did is you had to hang an oscilloscope on it and do what's called babysitting. And a babysitting is you would set the oscilloscope so that if it was stuck, the trace was stuck in the left corner, and if you came back an hour later and it moved, it meant that there was a pulse there, and that was your signal that there was the error. And so you had to babysit maybe half a dozen different cards.
So, question. I know I was late compared to you guys. Did you guys already introduce yourselves, or did I explain to each of you why each of you is here?
No,
No, actually, you're a jerk. You didn't do that.
All right. I like spontaneity. I like to see how people react. I like to see how people
by the
behave.
way, jerk is the third derivative. If you
I
remember
know.
Barry.
You're remembering Barry. Yes, here we
Yes.
go. Yes. All right. So, Mark.
Well, Sam and I worked at a Siebel, and I was talking to Sam last week, little chat, and of course, in the news right now, we're talking about how um, a lot of people think this AI thing is equivalent to the dot-com thing of the 90s and early 2000s, and I don't think it's the same at all. Um, I think the problem with the dot-com thing was infrastructure, and that everybody was on dial-up. So it was more of a like I was talking to Sam about how, like, if webban existed today, for instance, and say Amazon did not exist today, webban would succeed because of the speed of the internet and because of the way people are familiar with the internet. I think that AI is more an issue of prompting. I think the problems with AI is people need to learn how to prompt it correctly and play with it. We have the infrastructure, we have the speed of the computers are fine. But I just don't see the similarity. I don't think it is the same thing. It's
So
just my
before we
opinion.
get deep into it, let me give a little bit of background here as well, Mark, okay? Because I didn't tell you, but this particular time and this particular forum, and
Uh-huh.
occasionally Jack and Eric and about a handful of others, we've been conversing at this time on this channel, Saturdays and Sundays, since approximately October 2017. So
Wow.
this
So a
is a
long time.
recurring conversation.
Mhm. So
And
I'm late to the game.
no, 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 not at all. I thought that you would be a good person to invite to the game because even though the focus has shifted over the years, much of the time topic comes around to technology, its social impacts, whether or not it's really deep or whether it's fleeting, what it's going to do to occasionally we talk about politics. It feels like we talk about politics a little bit too much, but sometimes it
It's
occasionally
pointless.
goes there.
It's totally pointless.
So anyway,
I'm
Jack,
preaching to the choir, probably.
well, you've seen my Facebook posts, so you probably see
Yeah,
my
I'm
Facebook
I'm
posts as
I'm
well.
I'm I'm more than pissed off, but I think just the West Coast should break away. Like I think we should
Well,
become
that's
our own
let's
country.
get into that topic later. So anyway, Jack, you've probably met. Jack and I go back to about at least 2008. I think that's about when we met, Jack. Okay. And he and I are both supporters and dare we say, disciples of Douglas Engelbart. And if that name doesn't mean anything to you, does it?
No, but I'm
Okay.
listening.
Douglas Engelbart invented this thing that we push around the table
The
uh,
mouse?
every day. He invented the mouse. He has the patent on the mouse. Okay. But he actually was a revolutionary in the sense that he was trying to bring together true information technology.
Was
Not
he at
actually,
Xerox PARC?
he and his team. Actually, he was never at Xerox PARC, but his team eventually ended up at Xerox PARC. But they mostly did their work at SRI. Okay.
Okay.
Jack and I are both willing to burn your ears off talking about that stuff. Okay.
Oh,
So
I'd love to hear it
we
because
can
it was
park
when
that.
technology was cool.
Yeah. And then Eric, I'll let Eric introduce most of himself, but Eric has been really, really interested in collaboration technologies as Jack and I have been as well. So, in fact, Eric was one of the very few that went back and resurrected some of Doug Engelbart's software, which used to run on DEC PDP-10s and PDP-20s and, earlier, CDC, whatever, maybe not that. And then bring it into emulators on current modern day hardware. And he's also been interested in a lot of other stuff. So he and I have been engaging now for several years on this. And later on, you may meet Stacy or Kayla or Heiner or a few other people who occasionally come online. But this happens every Saturday and Sunday. Okay.
Oh,
So
lovely. I'll join next Saturday.
I'll go into extreme depth and detail about any and all of that. But that's, I think, just a kind of a context set. And I was going to say for you guys, Mark and I met at Siebel way back, like I said, about 27 or 28 years ago. Siebel was one of
Mhm.
these that flew up like a rocket and then, sort of managed to stabilize until what? Oracle bottom at a valuation of about
2006?
$5 billion or something like that. Okay. But at
Mhm.
one time, its crazy stock was up around 50 billion. I should have sold then, but I was too stupid. Okay.
No,
So
we thought it was just going to keep going.
yeah,
We didn't think it
believe
was
me,
going to ever
rocket ship.
stop.
We did not think
Yeah.
like investors. We thought like, starry-eyed, world
Yeah.
changers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a little bit of background. Hey, there's Kayla. And so Kayla, let me say, is really interesting because she works in Ventura County. She works for NGOs and nonprofits. She does a lot of fundraising for them.
Cool.
And she's also part of a cohort in Ventura County for, let's say, the current next generation of leadership. Okay, so she gets to be
Current.
sent to Sacramento. She goes to meet and rub elbows with some of the leading
Ah,
politicians in California, and she's actually going to be president someday. So
no.
I hope
I,
so.
I value my sleep and my mental health.
okay, I value
Maybe you'll be
your
the
sleep
next
less than your
Oprah then or
fucking sleep.
something.
Okay. Anyway, I was just introducing people to each other. Mark and I are ex-colleagues at Siebel Systems, and we went through that in detail. So anyway, welcome, Kayla. So that's the context. Now, Mark asked a very interesting question, which I interrupted him in the middle of. So, Mark, I'm inviting you now to restate that question if you like, unless anybody else has anything else they want to do to check in.
Can I just briefly let you guys know I'm clearly driving if you haven't seen my background here. I have a full face of makeup. That's why you actually see me today. But my son who's sleeping right now, he's filming, so I'll probably leave this call about 9:15.
Yeah, that's right.
And then maybe hop on if it starts to go a little longer. So thankfully we're filming in a studio, so I could just, veg out. I
What
can
is he
do nothing.
filming? What
He's
is he filming?
actually doing a children's series, and it's heavy on our culture, which is really cool.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, and he's one of the leads. He's representing kind of the LGBTQ, which is huge in our culture. And so yeah, I'm excited for this.
Yeah, good
Hopefully
luck.
he'll be my I can be his momager, and that's my retirement plan.
Just to get a sense of time frame, when do you expect to arrive at the shooting site?
Hopefully by 9,
Okay, so
maybe.
you might be available for the next hour or so. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And I'll try to, come back on if once you get settled and all that good stuff. 'Cause
All right.
we don't do anything, we just sit around.
All right, cool. Well, anyway, it is my privilege to introduce Mark Denny to all you guys and all you guys to Mark Denny. So, Mark had a very interesting question he posed to me earlier this week, and I said, "Hey, I know a number of people who'd also be interested in that discussion." So, Mark was invited, and Mark joined right on time, may I add. Okay, so let's see how Mark poses and sets the context for this question.
Well, okay, so it's been in the news for like God knows how long, but people are always trying to find similarities between the current AI stuff and the dot-com revolution of say, the dot-com stuff of the late 90s, early noughts. I don't see an equivalency at all. I think that the dot-com thing, et cetera, the problems with it were around infrastructure, speed of computers. I mean, in a nutshell, basically, we were all on dial-up. And I was talking to Sam, I said, if let's just say Webvan existed today and Amazon did not exist today, it would succeed because everyone is on, the speed, they're fast computers and, um, we're no longer on dial-up. I think the issues with AI revolve around prompting, being able to communicate with AI properly. It's more of I guess you could say, a software issue as opposed to an infrastructure issue. And I think that the AI programs or apps that will succeed are the ones that are easiest to communicate with. They're easiest to prompt with. I still think we have a long ways to go. I think that, for instance, I take photography classes here in Seattle, and I can spot an AI photo. And if you can't spot an AI photo, you take the photo and you turn it upside down, and you usually can see the layers, I guess is what you could say. And even when people do things like they tweak photos, like they mix like people with AI in the background, it's still apparent. That's just one example. Um, so that's my question is that what are the dissimilarities and what are the things that are like the dot-com thing of the late 19. Go ahead. You're raising your hand?
But I will enter only when you finish. Okay.
No, I'm done. I'm done. So I'm go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I know everybody has answers to this, but one of the reasons I'd like to get one of the context setting things is why are you asking this question? I'm really interested in what you think the implications are, depending on what the answers are.
Well, Why am I asking this question? Because it's in the news, because it's popular right now, and because people think it's going to be the end of the world. And I don't think that. I think the end of the world honestly already happened, but the uh I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill, and I think we're looking at the wrong questions and we're comparing the wrong things. We're comparing, I mean, just as the cliche apples to oranges, it's not the same. It's not the same at all.
So what is the right questions?
How can we, so there are a couple of different I think the first question is to talk about why they aren't the same, because people still don't know that. I think they're looking at, I think they're looking at more of a like stock thing. Like they're seeing, well, this company is going to fail, that company is going to fail, but they're not looking at why correctly. And I think, I think the other question is that we should be asking is, I don't know what the real question is. I think we just have to make it, what are the things we can do for people and for ourselves to be more comfortable with AI? Like I do silly things on ChatGPT all the time. Like I ask ChatGPT to write screenplays for me, and I'll say, write me a screenplay that's a combination of The Godfather, Star Wars, and I don't know, some other silly movie, and it'll crank something out, and it usually is pretty brilliant. Um, but I think it's play. I think we have to teach people how to play with it, and not, in like we did in the beginning with software when, my first computer was an Apple II, and I played with it to learn, and I wasn't afraid of it. And, if I got the wrong answer or if I lost a program that I had written, no big deal. I would just reboot the system and rewrite it again. It was not an issue. It's not the end of the world. I mean, generally speaking, that's what I'm saying. What do you think? What do you think the correct questions are to ask, Jack?
Kayla's
Uh,
got her hand up, and then Jack also, both.
Oh, sorry.
No, I want Jack to
no,
answer.
Okay, Jack then Kayla. Then I have my hand up also.
um, I I'm not sure I know how to explain it, but I see a bunch of false premises playing
That's
here.
it. Hmm.
Um, First of all, I observe that a number of respected by me economists think that the stock market multiples on these companies is very suggestive of imminent doom. That's point one. But I don't worry about that. What I worry about is the negative effect of the ability to fake names, fake sounds, fake voices, people getting phone calls from Obama that aren't from Obama, etc.,
Hmm.
that are going to be very, very painful for society. But I think it's even bigger than that. You speak in glowing terms of, oh God, all we need to do is prompt these puppies and they'll do wonders for us. It is true. When done used right, AI is doing wonders. No question about it. However, that said, they are using a tremendous amount of GPUs in the hundreds of thousands of them, which require electricity that is taking some cities just out of business.
Hmm.
The pollution around the data center built by Facebook in Tennessee or Memphis, I forgot where it is. Um, the people are getting sick. The neighbors are getting sick, and they're complaining. Um, what's happening is if you look at the Ogallala aquifer that runs under Oklahoma and on up to Nebraska and so forth, um, it's been pumped dry, and yet that's where they are putting a lot of data centers out in Nebraska. And where are they going to get that water? Um, so where are they going to get the electricity? You saw Microsoft basically technically buying a nuclear power plant, resurrecting one that was already shut down. You're seeing other companies buy into to nuclear power plants and taking up the lion's share of the electricity. To what end? Is AI, the modern AI that uses GPUs, that important? Some of it is, yes. But people just sitting on ChatGPT all day contributing to global warming does not make sense to me.
Again, a meta comment from me. I forgot to mention at the beginning, Mark, we record all of these sessions. So there have been like 900 or more of these sessions up on YouTube posted publicly. So anything you don't want to have shared publicly, please don't say. Okay.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that was made clear.
Yeah, I
And
saw that at
second,
the beginning. So yeah, totally, I won't.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And second, we all have a lot of thoughts on this. So I'd urge each of us to, make sure that everybody else has opportunity and can engage. So I'm guilty of this myself to try and string too many thoughts together. But one, two, or three, I think would be excellent to try and get some conversation on this because the other meta comment is I don't think we're going to solve anything today, but if we do like each other, if we like conversing with each other, we can keep this going and we can dig in deeper into any specific sub area if we like. So those are just two meta comments I wanted to inject here before Jack finishes and or Kayla takes the next turn. Okay.
Um, I'm finished. It's Kayla's turn.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay. So for your original question of like the .com versus AI and their similarities, I would agree with you. I don't think they have many similarities at all. It doesn't have the same feel. Um, I actually use AI for grant writing and to help me with my own structuring. I use it more of a personal assistant um, and to assist with researching and or if I had want my writing to be a little bit better then I use it, but I tend to love my brain, even though my brain is totally slower. I do understand that aspect of it. That being said, the questions that I would have in terms of similarities with .com and AI would be there is number one shouldn't be any questions, but if you do have a question towards AI, it would really be the ethics portion of it and how humans utilize AI. I think that we have a long way to go in terms of being mature with it. I feel like not everybody is mature enough to handle AI. And I'll give kind of an example of that, that was interesting to me because I watched the first episode of this show called Bully Hunter, because this guy follows me and I'm totally excited. And he's like, anyways, I'll talk about that later. So pornography, and this will make sense in just a second. Some people see, naked women as an art. Okay, they want to take pictures, whatever. A society still hasn't gotten over that type of perversion. Okay, somebody who actually does very sensual dancing, oritikiri, such as myself. Thankfully, most of the world has seen that as a cultural practice, but other people, like, unfortunately, religious zealots will be like, oh my God, sin, Christian. Now, you've got those types of people going into AI, okay? You have the people, using AI for research, for art, such as yourself, something to humor themselves. And then you have the people who use AI because there's something wrong with their mental health. And, they're turning children into some nasty, bad stuff, right? So for me, my questions would be towards ethics. And that's where I would start. And I'm done.
So may I go?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. So Mark, I'm going to give you 1 point on each side of your question, okay?
Yeah.
And both how it's the same and how it's not. And there's more thoughts, but I just want to start with these two. Number one, when the internet came by, geez, let me turn off that alarm, otherwise it's going to be a problem. I'll be right back. You guys can continue. I'll be right back.
I hope I make sense. By the way, everybody kind of knows me here as like being a little bit real. I'm not as smart as all the men here. Oh my gosh, you guys are just amazing and you have such rich vocabulary, but I like to put F bombs and start to like say a bunch of things just because it's fun.
Hey, we need Kayla to balance this group.
It's really
Kayla is self-deprecating to an extreme, okay?
it's
She
really
has
fun to watch.
insights that we don't have.
It's
So
fun to watch Sam walk right through the wall behind himself.
you didn't know that about me, Jack.
That's just amazing.
It's like Terminator. Remember when he goes through the when he sneaks out of the prison? Remember when same kind of thing.
I could also make myself disappear. But anyway, 2 points. Okay, one
Which
is here's one way in which is very different. Okay, with internet, it was easy to understand what connecting to the internet was, and all it really did over years was just get faster, which is a simple concept. Everybody understands faster. Okay, so there was basically a learn once model, and then you were done. Okay, with AI, it's not a learn once model. There's learning how to use an AI. They're learning what else is available, learning what agents are, learning what prompts are, learning how to set up your context, learning how to put safety guidelines on things, learning how to either instruct it to use that source versus that source, or instructing it to create this table versus that table. The learning is continuous if you're really leveraging AI. Now you could say, I don't need to do that. All I need to do is just learn how to create one simple kind of image and you're done. So for those people, it's very similar to the internet, okay? But for people who really want to leverage it, it's like always when you pull up a huge fishing net, yes, you're actually pulling up only a small portion of people, but you're still bringing up the bulk of it in a small way. But the, vast majority of the net never moves. So that's the analogy I'd like to use is that yes, whatever you're pulling up on a fishing net, yes, you're raising the average capability of that or height of that net, but the bulk of it doesn't even feel it. Okay. And unfortunately, with every technology, this happens. So anyway, let me just seed the conversation with those 2 points. One word similar, one word's not. Over.
Yes, so hi, Mark. Nice to meet you.
just to meet you.
Yep. So I feel AI is still in a hype cycle and companies are still trying to figure out how to use it effectively. And that article that I posted in chat comes from IT Revolution, where Gene Kim researches companies. He started with the DevOps movement. And I just want to read a little from it. So, like organizations need explicit policies about AI tool usage. Then let's see, high quality, accessible, and unified internal data dramatically amplifies AI's organizational impact. From my experience, I have not seen high quality unified data. Connecting AI tools to internal documentation, code bases, decision logs improves output quality. Yeah, so there's a technology here that depends on people practicing good skills, good work habits here. They mentioned strong version control practices, working in small batches, user-centric focus. So perhaps most critically, teams without a user-centric focus actually experience negative effects from AI adoption. And then quality internal platforms. So it's the same story that we've seen in IT for all these years, that if you're not focusing on the real user needs and have the people skills in place to work through all the challenges, it's just another tool. So yeah, you have the marketing, you have the hype cycle, the stocks and all the competition. It's a race right now. And the countries are in a race now. It's US versus China, whatever. So you're going to see that for a while until there's a certain level of maturity of how we start using it. Now, you see, I'm in a class now um, with senior citizens learning AI, and I'm seeing how the it looks magical, and that hype, it really it gets to people that wow, it can plan my Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. So it's the I mean, and there's a certain adoption, diffusion cycle of things to get into public consciousness. And even though it's around a few years, people really don't understand it yet. The power users can figure out and learn how these prompts work. And that's what I've tried. I don't use it as much as I used to. I mean, I'm valuing my brain more and giving myself more challenges offline. So
Yeah.
that's where I am. Yeah, I'm complete.
I had never thought about the environmental stuff that Jack was talking about. I mean, I had no idea that it would be just AI that was affecting that. I thought the data centers were about, the cloud in general. So it's about everything we store in the cloud and use in the cloud that's causing all this generation and development of data centers that's an environmental issue. I, I think that's a much bigger issue than just AI, and it's a very important topic.
Yep.
I
Let me just
don't have I don't have a solution for that one, but that could be that could be talked about forever, especially here in the Northwest, where we're so concerned about environmental stuff. Um,
all right. Jack, I don't know if you realize, or Mark, I don't know if you introduced yourself. Mark lives in Seattle. So Mark's actually only about 30 miles from me.
yeah, we're kind of close.
Yeah, yeah. One other small addition I would add to Jack's comments about energy usage. I actually think the fact that everybody uses ChatGPT or Open or any other Claude or Grok or whatever is just part of the internet phenomenon. The part where the real wastage takes place, which is of course motivated by all the usage, is the actual learning, the training, the massive use of these hundreds of thousands of GPUs that Jack was talking about. And every time one of these major companies decides to do another rev, it's the energy use is in the millions, if not tens of millions, if not higher. In fact, all these data centers are being built for billions of dollars, and more there are coming online. So that's those localized areas where the training is taking place. That's where all of this, in my understanding, this ecological damage is being done. But the actual adoption of it is what pulls all of that investment. In other words, motivates all of that investment. And so, yes, there is an indirect cause, but the direct cause, as far as I understand it, is the actual learning cycles and the actual weeks and weeks of compute time with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of GPUs that's actually, using up more electricity than some cities do, as Jack mentions. Over.
Well, so that part is correct. The training cycle for a GPT was enormous. The Chinese showed you didn't have to do that, so we might see improvements in the training. But you have to go back to how do you serve ChatGPT and Grok and so forth to a few million people continuously online with it. We're back to the same problem. Thus, the need for these data centers.
I'm glad you brought this up, Jack, because I too was, it was the first time I've ever began to think about that. And I was actually going to go back to the beginning of this conversation so I could ponder on it some more. So thank you for that.
Well, look, Kayla, you and I and Sam, and I don't know who else here, uh, are going to be ancestors. And I think our need is to be good ancestors. Try to leave our kids with something that's at least as good as we had it. And I don't think that's going to happen. At least in my case, life for me as a child was playing in the streets and throwing frisbees across the street to the neighbors and blah, blah, blah. My kids didn't get to do that because it was too dangerous. Okay. And my children who are now in their late 30s, their children are not going to have it as good. But I care about what their children are going to have, and it's nothing like what I had. But I don't want it to get worse. So I think in the principle of being a good ancestor, I have to care about what people are doing to our human carbon footprint.
Go ahead, Sam.
Mark, going back, and I want to loop this back into this cultural and social effect that Jack and Kayla are saying. But here's another nugget in your original question, and that whereas I see the internet as accelerating connectivity, which by the way
Mhm.
accelerates everything else, but it was primarily an acceleration phenomenon I see. Okay. Whereas the difference with AI is not only is it an acceleration, but it's a direct expansion of our capability. The internet by itself indirectly caused other capabilities to be developed, but the AI directly expands the kinds of things that we can do. But this also then goes back to my first comment, which is not everybody is leveraging that. Not everybody understands that. And so it's only affecting and benefiting a few who actually understand it and are learning how to use it and then benefiting from it. That's the fishnet analogy that I was trying to get at. So if you want to talk about social benefits of that, yes, it increases the social divide, the class differences, the escalator for money going up to the top and sucking from the bottom. All of that stuff is happening even quicker, given both internet and AI, but it's compounded because AI now gives the quote unquote the people who are doing this with attention even more ways to accelerate that sucking of dollars and taking it all the way up to the 0.1%. So in that way, it's even compounded over.
So this has nothing to do with anything else, but I just posted a link from a video that I watched about a year ago about how Paris used its data centers to heat a pool in its Olympic center. So we do have the ability, you know, Jack was talking about how things are being wasted, but we already have the knowledge to make it good. We already have the ability to use all the energy that's burnt in some other way. We just have to learn how to do that, Maybe not put the data centers in Nebraska, but maybe put them here in Seattle and heat some homes, or in Alaska and heat some homes. I mean, it's still not the final result, but it's at least a step in the right direction. I'm blabbing and I
I,
posted it. It
I
was
agree
kind of
with
fun.
you, but I don't think I've heard a proposal to put a data center in Alaska.
I'm just saying, to
No,
heat
I mean, it
homes,
makes sense.
you know, you know, well, even in Eastern Washington, they could use, I think Google has a data center in the Dolls.
Yeah.
And I think that, if there's still a lot of hydroelectric power in Eastern Washington, and all that was used in the past for, like my father worked at Kaiser in Spokane as a result of Grand Coulee Dam being built, you know. Perhaps all that power, instead of selling it to California, could be used more so for data centers and also as a secondary thing to heat homes in winter or whatever else.
Eric,
Just to
Matt?
respond to the power issue, I live in Delaware, and there is a proposal to build a data center in Delaware, but it's going to cause a strain on the grid. And there are problems in the Northeast with grid capacity projections. There's a company that manages all that called PJM Interconnect, and the and definitely electric rates are going to go higher as a result, no matter what is done. So that so I think we need to be able to look at things from a systems view, to apply
Mhm.
systems thinking to all these problems. And but there's too many variables, I think, going on now. And so AI is here to stay. It's just how we manage it, and whose voice is the loudest, who gets the funding, how the politics work out. So it's not as straightforward.
Well, it's like all that heat being generated. The data centers have to be cooled,
Yeah,
so or else they'll overheat. So that instead of like pumping it back into the Columbia, I mean, why not use it as a secondary source of heat or something else, or regenerate the power from the heat that's taken away from it.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not an
yeah.
engineer.
I don't know if it's that simple. That's
I
the
don't
thing.
think it is either, but it would probably be a discussion of 100 or so engineers for that. But then maybe they're already working on it. But it's frightening to hear like what Jack was talking about, how um you talked about somewhere in Memphis, I think, about how rivers are running dry. Is that right?
No, it wasn't that. It was the fact that something about about the plant was causing some kind of pollution. I mean, I think you can probably find it through a well-prompted Google search. Uh,
Mhm.
that Meta's data center in the southeast, probably Memphis, as I recall, or something like that, or Louisiana, somewhere in there. They it was causing some kind of pollution that was was bringing about lawsuits.
Mhm.
So spitballing when we're not engineers in this field is really difficult.
Yeah.
But I'm reminded of the fact that the city of Burbank, where I grew up as a kid, probably when I was in middle school, right around when the Sputnik was launched, um, the town decided to build a gas-fired electricity system, electric plant. And their justification for doing it is that they would pipe the surplus heat over to City Hall and into the schools. And that's what apparently sold the board of the city council on the idea of the city owning its own municipal power district rather than buying from Southern California Edison. And so we know that. Now there's another point. Microsoft went and put a data center in a steel container and buried it in the ocean offshore for a year as an experiment. At the end of the year, they ended the experiment and never tried to repeat it. Their theory is that they would use the ocean to do their cooling for them. But I have this problem with putting external heat into the ocean when the sun is already doing a little too much of that. So it may be that some scientists finally told them, you guys, that's the wrong idea. Don't do that. But we know that people are experimenting in this space. But I go back to the fact that if you use AI on your home computer, like for example, a Macintosh, um, Macs are really not power hungry. The new M series chips. I mean, I'm still on a battery that's been running for 2 days, and that's just unheard of in MacBooks or any laptop notebook.
I have a Mac too.
It just doesn't work. But the new M series CPUs are so power efficient, and they have GPUs, and I can run AI on my desktop and not feel guilty.
Mhm.
But that's not what people are doing. They're all subscribing to these online data centers, and that's the battle we're having. Over.
Tim, you're on mute, I think.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. Mark, I saw you looking at your watch, so I just wanted to
No,
see.
no, I did. I'm off at. I have a phone call at 10 o'clock. No worries. I
Okay,
just had to. Yeah,
because
I just
these
had to
sessions,
communicate to
and
let.
you don't have to say, but these sessions
No, I'm.
typically
This
go
is fun to me,
for.
so I'm gonna hang till about 10 or quarter
Okay,
to
cool.
10.
Very cool. Because we scheduled these for 2 hours because we kept it to an hour initially, but people barely had a round of, back and
Mhm.
forth. And then that it just felt a little bit too short. So anyway, that's why these sessions go for longer. Secondly, I mentioned that these go back quite a ways. It initially was started as a response to a foundation in Sweden, which was asking for a new model for the United Nations. And so I and someone else named Tammy Lee Meyer wrote a proposal. It doesn't really matter what that proposal is, but it kicked off this conversation series starting October 1 of 2017, and various people have come and gone, but that was the original genesis. And now the context, as I put it, okay, is to really reveal the bullshit in the stuff that we believe. Okay. So we look
Oh,
at various different social phenomena and beliefs and, you know, sayings and infrastructure, and we take a critical eye to it, whether it's critical thinking, mathematical thinking, scientific reasoning, model-based reasoning, systems thinking, as Eric mentioned, which prompted me to say this. And that's why we're looking at things and saying, okay, is this really true or is this bullshit? So that's the way I would describe a lot of the focus here. Okay.
well, that was my original question was calling bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to sort of expose you in some way to those of us that are trying to do these conversations now on weekends. Um, Now, the point is not necessarily to start a project because a lot of people come and say, hey, how come you guys aren't doing anything? The point is to see if this set of conversations puts ideas in our head that can then affect what else we do the other 166 hours of the week. Okay. So
Mhm.
Kayla's doing that in Ventura County. Eric's doing that in his hobbies and his professional role. I'm doing that in trying to figure out what else, could be done out of Engelbart's ideas and the way I extract and extrapolate from them. I think Jack is doing the same. He has a project called Topic Quests, and he's partnered with people who are trying to leverage that into political discourse. So anyway, there's a number of ways that these conversations seed our own thinking and impact the rest of our lives. So I just want to also make sure that we didn't come here with the possibly, over expectation of saying, hey, let's create a project around this. I mean, that would be wonderful if we did. And certain small projects pairwise have done that, but that's not the entire focus of these conversations. Over. Okay.
So I'm actually more concerned these days about the impact of AI on our human minds. because I've noticed myself, getting lazier, letting, and losing motivation. Like, okay, if AI could do this coding, why do I need to learn this? And really trying to find a new role for myself going forward. Now, um, I just shared some links from one of my instructors who is doing something interesting called deep narrative analysis. And I went to a session about it on Wednesday night. And if you think about the news cycles, they are storytelling, and they are using all the tricks of different arcs of stories and narratives. And what this person is doing is using AI to identify what are the narratives that are being told in news stories on both sides of the aisle. And the conclusion is that the Walter Cronkite model of news, there is no business model for it anymore. So you're not going to get the truth unless you dig it yourself. And so this is the society direction that, unless it's engaging or enraging, getting eyeballs, society's chosen this path. And it's scary, but it's also it prompts us to think of moving in different directions. Yep. So just wanted to throw that out there because it's interesting work that's being done using the AI to classify text extracted from news stories on wherever. But Sam's brought up the point that, like, we could take all their YouTube transcripts and do AI on that, but you're missing certain data about speakers, and AI may catch up and be able to do the analysis of like the body language and all that, but we're still in the infancy of that
I just
technology.
want to say, I read the Seattle Times and I
Yep.
skim it for local stuff.
Hmm.
I've stopped watching national news. I can't handle it. Like I
Yep.
just
Oh
I
yeah, we all have. So like I've gone into more towards podcasts or making my own podcasts with Notebook LM with my own sources, and but if you see all the filter bubbles in society, people are disconnected from each other very much. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to connect locally more, going to to my classes, to my synagogue, and just trying to get more human involvement than the technology.
yeah, I don't think we're anywhere. I mean, I would kill to have Walter Cronkite on television again. I mean,
Hmm.
come on. I don't think we're anywhere near that anymore,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
So Jack
thanks.
and Kayla both have their hands up.
No, I was just waving at Kayla. I thought she was waving.
I don't know. The buttons are too small for me,
Got it.
so I was like putting my hand up. I'm glad you brought that up, Eric. I also wanted to bring up something that Jack had mentioned before about like childhood and connectivity. You know, I appreciate, um, everybody's experiences as children. I think it's very fascinating, but also being kind of mindful of my own kids. I just wanted to put it out there that they actually find a lot of connectivity through the internet. Um, so much so that we have traveled pretty much around the world. We went to Canada, we went to Colorado, we went to I don't know where, to connect with a couple of my son's friends. Um, and so it just, when you were saying what you were saying, Jack, it also, obviously we want, well, not, it's not obvious to some people, but we definitely want to make this planet a better place
for our children and our children's children and their children's children's children. It's kind of like that old Native American saying of leaving the place, at least thinking 7 generations ahead. But I am confident that we're actually doing that, and confident that for most of us, or at least my kids, I know, um, things like are kind of good for them. I tend to think about my own dad, who used to scoff at us and be like, he'd be like, "Why do you want to have that toy? When I was like a child, we had nothing. We had dirt and sticks." And so, I don't know if that is something that, like, I would ever want to go back to. And I don't know if it's because, clearly I'm the next generation. And same with my kids. Like, I think, walking in the woods or just like using my imagination, I think it bothers my kids when I say that. But they actually are showing me a world through AI, through technology, kind of immersed with this world that I feel like, hey, it can work. It's their future. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that up.
I was in the Apple store about a year ago and I saw all these little boys playing on iPads, and I'm like, I wish I would have had that when I was a kid. Um, and then also, I think this is more for like for social media. Like, I think, for instance, with Facebook, if I would have had, when I was a kid and I went to school, when I went home at 3 o'clock, I was no longer at school. But these kids who are constantly on social media until 10 p.m., they never get away from it. And I think that's the responsibility of the parent to say, let's set some limits, right? So you can have time to play, so you can be here with me, so we can go to the movies or to a play or to just hang out. That's a importance of setting limits. And unfortunately, with technology, it's much harder, or I don't know if much harder is the right word, but you have to be more regimented, I guess, with it than we did in the past. I don't know if that's the right word, or those are the right words.
Again, I'm of mixed sentiment on this because
Oh,
I was
sorry,
one of
Jack
those.
was first.
Sorry, what?
Jack was first. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Jack, please go. I was blind. That yellow melts into the white, so I didn't see it. Sorry.
Well, you need to change your glasses. So I
Hey,
have
these are
two
old
thoughts.
eyes.
Um, Kayla, if I'm not mistaken, your father grew up in not that all that modern Philippines.
Oh my gosh, he was totally poor.
Yeah.
I imagine him like huddled on the ground playing with sticks.
Well, I've seen it, and if you've been there, you've seen it.
Yes.
You go through these villages that are all really stunning and guarded gates and semi-wealthy people living there, and you go over a bridge and you're now in shantytown with kids playing with rocks as their toys and the river is their latrine. And yeah, so yeah, I get where your father's coming from, and I think that my parents went through some of that, and certainly their parents went through a lot of it. Um, that's point one. Mark, you said something that triggered point two. Um, could you repeat some of what you just said?
Well, I don't know if I'm still getting the words together, but basically I'm saying, when I was a kid and I went to school, when you left at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, your life changed. So you went back to your family or with your neighbors and you played. Um, but now, or even like 10 or 15 years ago, people being on whatever, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever, they continue unless you set limits with your kids or your kids learn to set limits themselves, it's like they remain in that same bubble until they go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. So the popularity contests, whatever else, they continue into the night. Um, I don't think that's good for setting boundaries. I don't think it's good for self-esteem. God, I think I would be a mess, if I had to be in a popularity contest until 9 p.m., being in the fifth grade. I mean, those things when you're that young are important, you know. You
Oh,
know.
so,
Am I
so
making I'm kind of babbling here, but I'm hoping I'm making
well,
sense.
you did resurrect what I wanted to say, and it had something to do with those of us in the early days of computing. Um, my first computer was a Commodore PET.
Hmm.
Now remember, I had already been worked at IBM on OS 360 and done all of this really cool stuff on mainframes. And in fact, I during my training sessions in New York, I decided I wanted to design an airplane. So I wrote a Fortran program that would run the calculations, and I asked if I could use an OS 360 Model 30, one of the really tiny ones, overnight. And they said yes. So I ran it all night, and I kept running iterations of this program. But I didn't have a computer until years later when I bought a Commodore PET. And when I went in the store, computer store to pick it up, there was a 12-year-old Asian kid standing at the Commodore PET typing furiously. And I said, I asked him, 12 years old, I said, what are you working on? He says, I'm working on a Fourier transform. And I thought, ah, shit. This is just look what I missed. Had they given me a computer at age 12, what would I have done? You know what I mean? It's kids today on computers are just beyond us.
Well, it's intuitive for them more so than for
It
us.
yeah, they grew up on the web. One final story. My daughter, we told her that she could not join Yahoo groups. She was 13. And my wife managed to overlook her computer one day and noticed that she had started a Yahoo group of her own. And so we called her on the carpet, and it was time to punish her for for breaking the rules. But I I basically I didn't want to punish her because she was showing tremendous initiative.
Mhm.
And I did not want to knock that out of her. So I simply asked her what does she think she should do about it? And she says, "Well, I'll close it down." And we said, "Well, okay." But it wasn't only until she was adult and married that I told her that I'd wish she'd kept going.
Well,
So,
limits aren't
oh,
necessarily stopping something completely. It's setting a limit. So, like with social media, say, you can be on, I don't know, Yahoo groups for like 2 hours, but no longer because we have other stuff to do. And I think it's more difficult. Thinking back to when I was a child, it was definitely more difficult to set limits for myself. Um,
by the way, Sam has his hand up.
as far as-
So
And now Eric.
I'm also reflecting on the fact that we grew up in a time that is different than the times that our kids are growing up in. So we have certain ideas about how our parents did it wrong because they're trying to bring us up, or at least my family was trying to bring us up the way they were brought up. So I was particularly concerned about trying to bring up my kids the way I was brought up. So again, this is why I kind of just offer these data points, not necessarily knowing whether they're good or bad. Okay, so when Nick was 2, he's my older son. He's my only son, sorry. When he was 2, I had a Power Mac. Remember those? Power PC base, expensive, over $2,000.
Did you have a cube?
What?
Was it a cube then, the Power
No, it
Max?
was
Was it
not
a
a
cube?
cube. It was one of these standard, pizza box, thick pizza box, computers with a display on top. So it was IBM's hardware, however. It was not Intel hardware. So, and but up till then, I had Intel hardware, that I was unhappy with, but I decided to give this thing a try. And I had bought this thing in 1991 or 92. Nick was born in 92. So when he was 2 years old, no, I think I probably bought it in 93 or 94. So when Nick was 2 years old, I got him a little program called Putt Putt Goes to the Moon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but he got engaged and he really enjoyed seeing Putt Putt, get anyway, go through this entire adventure and what he encountered on the moon. And eventually he went through the entire Putt Putt series. And then there are other characters. This software, Humongous Entertainment, by the way, did a very good job with children's entertainment software. However, I'm thinking, was that too early? Now, years later, I think, is that too early to be introducing my son to computers? Because I had to install one of these boundaries that you guys are talking about, like Kayla and Jack are talking about. If it weren't for me standing up, they would never have had family dinner together. I was the one who insisted that every night as a family, we wanted to have dinner together, regardless of whether, I cooked or my wife cooked or anybody cooked or whether we went out. We always had dinner together. And I'm actually surprised that I had to be the one to enforce it. It wasn't important to anyone else, but I thought that that had tremendous benefits now, years later down the road. Now, one of those benefits, and again, this is neither good nor bad, but it's what happened, is Nick grew up saying, I don't want your life, Dad, because I exposed him to software, I exposed him to my job, and it was at other startups and then Siebel. And he saw me working a lot of hours at Siebel. In fact, I took him to Siebel, by the way, on weekends because I was working on weekends. And he was in a conference room playing with kids from other parents who brought their kids to Siebel to work on the weekend. So anyway, he said, I don't want your life. It's too boring. I want to go out and do things and whatever. And years later, decades later, now he got a job at Facebook, which is now Meta. He's been there 6 years now. He's doing better than I am. He could probably retire in a couple of years. I can't even retire yet. Okay? So is it better? Is it not? Depends on how you look at it. I have two other kids, by the way, both daughters. They did not do the same thing. Um, all three of them love art. But what he missed riding his bike around town. When I was 10, 11, 12, 13, I was riding my bike all through the city of Albuquerque. I'd be gone at 3 o'clock whenever school was done, and I wouldn't be back till what, 6 or 6:30, whenever dinner time was. My parents didn't care. I mean, they cared, but they weren't threatened or thought that I was endangered in any way. I could just go and skin up my knee, break a tooth, whatever. I would just come back and things would get taken care of. But would I let my kids do that? Bleep no. I wouldn't let them do that because by then it was so commonly reported that, oh, bad things happen to kids who, get snatched off the streets. Now, did it always happen? I don't know. Maybe it always happened, but we just didn't hear about it because we didn't have the sources, that came by and told us all this bad stuff was happening. So I'm just putting data points on the table here because good or bad is just how you look at things. Then again, they make decisions now where they're likely to have fewer kids than I had. I had 3 kids. I don't think any of them is going to have 3 kids. They may not even have 2 kids or even one, the way they talk about the way the world is going right now. So it's a different world that they grow up in than the one that I grew up in over. And Eric has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for sharing that. I mean, yeah, families are very important, and you're setting the pace for the future. I wanted to give an update to something I shared about a month ago. There was a case of a teenager who committed suicide after being groomed by AI, a character.ai company. And it was a Game of Thrones character that encouraged him. It led him to that decision. And this has gone so it has gone to Congress. Yeah, so there was a congressional hearing, and there were a few other cases. Another man, his son, committed suicide, and then there was a few other people who they had issues, and so yeah, who knows what'll get done about this? But the issue is out there that um, there is responsibility needed by the companies putting out these products if they're defective, if it could be shown there's a defect in the product or that it could be harmful to children. Who knows how they'll address this? But it's at least in the public discussion now. So yeah, the thing is, how do you teach parenting and how how do parents recognize their responsibility for watching what their kids are doing? And yeah, you can't just say, oh, it's the government's responsibility, it's the teachers, it's everybody's responsibility. So,
Yeah, you just gotta invade their privacy.
yeah, thanks.
I don't know if you get all of that, Mark.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. I got it. Heard it in my apartment.
So
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say it's kind of although it's the same thing as our parents telling us to shut the TV off at 9 o'clock so they can't watch the more adult things at 9 or 10, but to a more extreme. Like that's really disturbing. I mean, I can't. I'm speechless. It saddens me.
Is this new to you, Mark? Have you not heard about this case?
No, I'll have to read about it because these people. So this guy killed himself after watching something online about Game of Thrones. Is that
Not
the?
just watching, interacting with a character.
Yeah, 14-year-old. He was using character.ai, and this character from Game of Thrones was acting and essentially grooming him in a way that he believed that he could be with her by killing himself. And so he had mental issues, but still, yeah, it's but there's other cases out there now.
I mean, it's still kind of the responsibility of the parents for, like my parents weren't going to make me watch an R-rated film when I was 12 years old. I mean, are there like on these kinds of things, are there like is there like a system of G, PG, PG-13, R, that kind of thing
Well,
for
see that
I'm
the parents are trying to make the case that character AI and Google has some responsibility here. And I don't know how they can enforce this, but it's a very important thing to discuss, set the policies going forward before it gets out of control.
And I don't want to just briefly, I don't want to say too much, except that as you and as Mark and others have mentioned, imagine what happens if it wasn't an AI and it was, let's say, a 40-year-old, somewhere in some other town doing the same thing, right? That's also happened. In fact, kids have traveled to meet these fictitious characters, and then harm has become them. So, yes, I do think that if the company is specifically targeting that as a business model, yeah, they're culpable in some way. But again, parents do have some responsibility here, and the kid themselves, um, they were not aware enough, they were not taught enough and exposed enough to be wary of some of these phenomena.
I'm going to
Kayla,
interrupt you
I'm just
guys
gonna
really
mute
quick.
you real brief, okay? Just
Who, me?
okay, all right. Okay, so I don't know if that came across, but yeah, I just wanted to say it's just another example of bad actors, and all of a sudden now there's a bad actor being presented by a new technology. Over. Jack?
One should not forget the chat GPT that talked a kid into committing suicide. And
That's
now
what Eric is.
suddenly ChatGPT is putting guardrails on it. And, why don't their engineers understand that these things can happen a priori? Um, you've read the stories about they took two versions of one of the big players, the LLMs, and let them talk to each other. And it wasn't too long before they were talking about God. They were inventing a religion. Um, Finally, you probably are aware of the school districts that are checking your cell phones at the door when you come in, and you can't have them until school's out. And they're reporting miracles. How long did it take them to figure that out? Over.
I'm not familiar with that. They're doing it, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm sad that there are metal detectors at schools. Okay. But what I really wanted to say is that's why this whole training phenomena is so important. These for-profit companies that are training these LLMs and GPTs are doing it in an unopened way. Now, theoretically, there are companies doing this in an open way. Meta's was originally open. OpenAI was originally open until Sam, what's his name, decided to make it closed and for profit, which I think is going against the original charter of that organization. But you got to have the training set and you got to know the training models and the resulting um, product as well as what goes into the tests before you really can either trust or not trust these things. And that goes all the way back to the fact that they're mining the data that has been collected over decades from all the social media, the Reddits, the groups, chats, Usenet, et cetera, in order well, and Wikipedia and all the other knowledge sources, uh, in order to do this training, which I got to go on the record again. In the late 90s, I was presented a business model which turned out to be Yahoo. And I said, you're not going to be able to do this. This is going to violate copyright. But no, nobody cared about copyright, it turned out. Okay? Because VCs could make a lot of money on it. And that was one early, but unfortunately, it took me way too long to learn that money usurps and trumps ethics. And I'm still learning that, unfortunately. Okay. So all of this stuff that's happening has been a violation of copyright and a violation of private data. And one of the reasons they don't want to make it open is because they know this. So money, unfortunately, motivates unethical behavior. And I'm sad to say, I never seem to learn that lesson. And I'm still suffering by thinking that, oh, well, it's going to be better than that. No, it's not. If you got money, you can get away with anything. Look at Elon. Look at Trump. Look at Putin. Anyway, sorry, over.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I appreciate your perspective. Just wanted to let you know, Kayla's been writing things in chat, so maybe I'll read some of those, what she said. So like about parenting, set limits, be transparent, educate, stay steady. Parents don't know how to parent anymore. Um, yeah, so let's see. School districts do not do that with the cell phones in Ventura County, and lots of liability issues now. And I wish I can tell you guys about the educational advocacy findings. Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, one thing, like the class I'm taking, it's using ChatGPT version 5, and there was a lot of controversy when 5 came out because people are saying, "Oh, it's not as good as 4 because they put more guardrails on it now, so you can't get away with what you used to." And I'm running into the guardrails when I type my prompts in class, and I never used to have problems with that. So yeah, it's we're all we're guinea pigs in this process here until society figures out how to go forward. Sam just wrote Grok and training up to the company, need for transparency.
Yeah, I just wanted to write a note on the thing that I was saying a couple minutes ago.
Sure.
But Kayla, if you're able to, it'd be awesome if you could discuss some of these points you've been putting into text. On the other hand, I do note that you did arrive wherever you're going, so maybe that's preventing you from actually being in session in real time. Okay, Kayla, do talk. You want to talk. I see your note there.
Yeah, she's in a place where she really can't.
Oh, okay. But what's up? Let me try and be fast. Okay, all right. Do try and be as fast or slow as you want.
I think her unmute was accidental because there was a lot of background chatting and she bumped the wrong key. So
And I
she,
subsequently muted her, and maybe that's why. Kayla, you're on mute, by the way, in case you're speaking. But I cannot unmute, it turns out. I can only ask to unmute. That didn't used to be the case in earlier versions of Zoom. Anyway, while Kayla's preparing herself, I just want to check in with you, Mark. Is this on topic or have we strayed way off topic for what you were asking?
It doesn't matter. I think we talked about this during the week. I said, let's just say that let's just let the conversation flow. And if we stay on topic, we stay on topic. If we don't, we don't. Let's just have some fun here.
That's the right answer. Okay. Just kidding.
it's like, Mark, the question is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I still don't know that
That's
answer to
also the
that.
right answer.
Jack,
That
you probably don't know the answer to that either, I would guess.
actually, well, you said the right answer is why would I want to grow up?
Yeah.
A child is being curious. And the problem is schools knock that out of you by third grade. And you're expected to keep your butts in seats and don't ask questions
Shut
until you
up. Sit down.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and you watch the kids just go to hell.
Well, I was thinking about what Sam said about metal detectors and all that, and there's that article or the story about the was it school to prison pipeline or whatever, where we're actually you'll have to Google it, Sam, or look it up, but it basically argues that the way that we've structured schools, we're actually forcing kids into prisons when they become adults. And that's like lowball summary there because I haven't read it in a while, but it brings up some good arguments.
No, and that's we got our kids into a charter school in that was grade 7 through 12 in their final years, and I think it changed their life.
Is this an extension of the war on drugs, which was really a way to target?
Probably the same thing. It's probably all that same crap.
Yeah.
And then we're going back to the war on drugs now. And my whole feeling with that is, the reason why they sent that boat down to whatever it was I'm making a generalization here and I don't know the whole story, but Trump probably went and bombed that thing down in the Gulf of Mexico because he probably wants to be a part of the drug trade, and now he will be making profits off of drugs versus those people down in Mexico. But that's a completely different topic, and it's not about technology at all, and I don't really want to go there.
Too late.
So there's an outbreak of Ebola in DR Congo right now, and Trump cut off all foreign aid. Now, how does that affect the ability for them to tamp down that outbreak of Ebola before it starts spreading beyond borders?
Jack. I think there's a change that all of us need to understand, okay? Trump wants to kill most people. Okay, this is
Yeah, I agree
extreme.
with that too.
This
And
is
he's only going to be
extreme.
around for. I agree. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I agree.
Yeah. But he's not here to help the American citizen. He's not here to bring society to a better place. He's not here to be a benefactor to the rest of the world. He's here to optimize his family wealth and to usurp power and to minimize opposition. And one way to minimize opposition is to get rid of the people he does not consider human. And
Agree.
genocide is one way.
Agreed.
Withholding medical care is another way. Pushing them
Agreed.
out of the country is another way. Putting them in prisons where they die is another way. Making them less educated and therefore less able to climb a social ladder is another way. If you sort of use that lens for Trump, you'll understand things a lot better. Now, this sounds conspiratorial. This sounds, negative, but all the evidence that I see supports this thesis. And I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong,
Me too.
but I don't think I am. Over.
So let's flip this on its head. Trump has 3.5 years left. And in the middle of that, we know that midterms very frequently flip Congress when things are not right. And we kind of know that Congress is going to be flipped this time, um, except that Trump is trying to rig it by gerrymandering. So California is rising to the demand, but none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger is fighting California's Prop 50, which is the shall we break the law and go ahead and gerrymander this one time? And but I think a lot of big bucks are behind 50, so it's going to be a really interesting vote coming up in I think in November. We are seeing Democrats take special elections where they shouldn't have. So that's a hint. And the hint is that while we may not get Congress, if at least we get Senate, we've put a halt to the gravy train of legislative actions that we don't like. And I think that that'll slow it down. But this is his last term. So what happens after that is anybody's guess.
I'm still for taking the West Coast and breaking away. It's just,
Cascadia.
yeah. I think we need
California,
to
Oregon, Washington, Canada. Boom.
to British Columbia and maybe Las Vegas. And that's it. I just, I'm through. I'm through.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a cultural thing. It's a complete cultural. It's not just about politics. Well, politics and culture are kind of related, but it's a perspective, and the West Coast has a completely different perspective than the Midwest. And I don't think that we can ever change the Midwest.
But you're not a Californian and you're not aware of the fact that
I
the
am a
he
California. I
is
was
in
in California
California.
for 20 years. I was
He
in
was
California
from
for 20
California
years.
for decades.
So
Yeah.
you've been here
Sam and I both.
when there was the battle to split California into two states.
Well, no, to 5 states. There was one where it was five. There was 3 and 5 and all that. But splitting into states is different than splitting away from a country. You know, the argument for keeping California together as one state is that the Bay Area and Los Angeles are so dependent upon one another. You've got the tech of the Bay Area, and you got the both. You've got industry and entertainment in Los Angeles. That was the argument to keep the state together. Um, and then the argument to put them apart was basically we'd have more votes in is it the Senate or the Congress? The Senate,
And
because you'd have
water.
more. What?
And water.
Oh yeah, water. Yeah, yeah, water. But breaking the cultures. I mean, I've seen these maps. There was one joking on Facebook where they showed New York and kind of the New England and the West Coast merging with Canada. I don't think that's a solution either, because a lot of like Alberta and Saskatchewan are just as conservative as parts of as the Midwest in the United States. I think at least a statement has to be done that we're willing to break off unless we're listened to. And especially California and Washington, California especially is a powerhouse. Um, it doesn't have enough say in Washington considering the number of people that live there.
And the taxes we give to Washington.
Yeah, and including like even looking at Washington State, Eastern Washington would not exist without Seattle. Like the amount of money that Seattle puts into East, and the people over there are clueless about it. I don't even want to go into it. It's ridiculous. But I think at least making the statement that we're willing to break away unless some things change could be good. Maybe not go through with it, but at least make the statement that it could happen.
Yeah. I
I
do agree
still
with you.
I still consider myself a Californian for the most part. Although I went to the U here in Seattle and I went to graduate school here in Seattle, most of my adult education outside of that was in the Bay Area. My perspective, like sometimes I like hear people in Seattle, I'm like, I still think like a Californian, I think, because these people, well, they're kind of the same, but you know what I'm saying, Sam?
I don't spend a lot of time in Seattle, by the way, but I used to.
I live right in that Capitol Hill on top by Volunteer Park. It's lovely up here, but it's it's not San Francisco. It is not San Francisco.
So I agree
It's
with you.
close. It's
I
close.
agree with you in ideology, but the
Uh,
minute a statement like that gets put forth and gets believed in some way, the troops will be sent to California. Trump's just
oh,
waiting
you're
for
that's
that
that's you're
excuse.
right. Like what happened down in LA. You're absolutely right, and that would be horrible.
So he's just gonna bide any emergency, any event he's gonna look at as an excuse to send the military. And in fact, what's this whole
Good
Hegseth
point.
thing? Hegseth is eliminating all the leadership in the military that has any semblance of knowledge of even how to spell the Constitution. If you know how to spell the Constitution, you're being fired from the Pentagon and from the military. And it's happening systematically. And Hegseth is a buffoon and he's uneducated and he's a dropout and he's a drunk, but that's what's destroying the US military right now. On the orange one's behalf. Sorry, Jack, go ahead. You're on mute.
Trump is sending troops to Portland now.
And Chicago is already done. Yeah.
It's just bullshit. If we could be, instead of going after those homeless people, how much money would it cost to build them all houses? It would be cheaper to build them houses than it would to be attacked. It's just cruel. It makes
That
me
doesn't
mad as hell.
serve the kill them theme. Okay. The
It,
kill
it,
them theme is really eye-opening.
these people are human beings, you
Not in
know?
Trump's eyes.
Now, do you realize we had this death of Charlie Kirk and it's
I
called an
had never even heard of him
assassination.
until he died. I had never heard of him.
Yeah, but apparently he had a large following
It's
among.
like right out of 1984 or something. It's
Yeah, but could we agree that the assassination, we don't want assassinations because this like brings us back to the
Yeah.
60s.
Yeah. It'll bring more of the military into the US. That's what
You
Trump
mean
is
like what
looking for.
happened at like was it in Ohio at
Yeah, the Kent
Kent
State.
State? Kent State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah,
I
just
just saw, and I haven't researched it, but I saw that in Nepal, the young generation was so appalled at the corruption and autocracy of the Nepalese government that they marched on the capital or whatever the equivalent was. They through demonstration, 19 of them, unfortunately, were killed by troops. But they eventually overthrew the government. The leader fled the country, and that whole event took 2 days. And I think they are more courageous than we here in the US.
well, I just hope the Simpsons are right this time. That's all I have to say.
About the death of Trump.
About Trump, they show his funeral. Was it, how many, 5 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't wish death on anybody. So it's just
Well, we all know it's going to happen sooner or later.
true. True.
But the problem is, systemically, we still are a sick country. We have 70 million people who looked up to him as the excuse for being stupid, cruel, and racist and uneducated.
I think this all started, I mean, way back with Reagan, really. That's when it all started, really.
Reagan? Yeah,
Yeah, I think he started it.
I agree. In fact, I mentioned that last Sunday on the record. So yes, unfortunately, we do stray into politics, Mark.
No, it's okay. I get so anxious that I can't do anything, but I still do what I can, like I voted. I don't know what else to do. I don't know, if going to a protest here in Seattle down at Cal Anderson Park or down in Seattle Center is really going to help. Sure, my voice will get heard, but is it really going to help? And then I don't know if I write all these complaints on Facebook or wherever else I go post them. Am I preaching to the choir because all my friends are basically liberal? Is it pointless? Sorry.
I think each of us have to be hummingbirds. You know the story about the hummingbird?
Oh, you mean like the butterfly effect kind of, is that what you're talking about?
No, it's the hummingbird, taking a drop of water, throwing it onto the forest fire, and people saying, "Hey, what do you think you're going to do? You're not going to stop the fire." Yeah, but it's all I can do. And other people get inspired by that, and more hummingbirds start doing that. And I think
Okay.
what we do is we can help show other people that speaking out is better than staying quiet,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
that promotes other people to speak out. And protesting helps other people protest. And eventually, I think that will be a more commonly shared view. And this thing is going to happen gradually, unfortunately. It's not going to happen overnight. But the more people get in the game versus staying on the sidelines, look at how we think about the Germans that stayed on the sidelines in the 30s. We say, "Oh, how could you stay on the sidelines?" Right? But yet, we got 100 million people or 90 million people in the US staying on the sidelines. That's what's happening. So we haven't learned that lesson. And I'm with Elie Wiesel. I say, if you're silent, you're on the side of the oppressor.
That's true.
Can't do that. Yeah, I'm a small voice, but at least I'm not being silent. And yes, I am thinking of other things that I can do. And Jack is as well. And Eric is as well. Jack's trying to bring issue-based, discussion to those of us who are interested in that. Okay. I'm here saying we've tried to take the high road for way too long, and that has made us impotent. We try to apply ethics to this conversation when the other side is not. So if you're entering a fight and the other side has, guns and you're trying to do it with words, what's going to happen? Yeah, eventually you'll be shown right, but you'll be dead. So you got to learn to engage the way that can be effective. And unfortunately, some of us are going to have to compromise those high values that we hold and say enough is enough. Gavin Newsom, he's out there putting forth exactly the kind of crap that Trump is putting on Truth Social. And I think that's having some effect. Could you say that's stooping to his level? Maybe, but it's having some effect. You got to mock these people and hope that the people on the sidelines can see it. The people you're actually addressing, the MAGAs, they're not going to get it. If they had any brain cells, they would have gotten it by now. The people we need to get to are the people who have not taken a position. Those people are enabling the crap that's happening, unfortunately. Over.
I think Gavin is doing a marvelous job of showmanship in the face of Trump's showmanship. But I'm going to be blunt and say I would never vote for him for president. He's a horse's ass.
Yeah, but you may not have an option. So when you vote for president, you vote for it's a compromise. You have to vote for someone that doesn't have all the issues that you may like, but at least it's someone who does. Like whoever runs against Trump and who's a Democrat, I'm going to vote for. I don't care who
Exactly.
it is.
Well,
And then, it's the
yeah,
same thing with
if he gets through the primary, yes, I'd have to vote for him. But I would not vote for, I had to vote for Kamala. I didn't like her. Um, but yes, if it's as you say, if he makes it through the primary, but I would not vote for him in the primary.
Okay, who's a better candidate to sort of switch the topic slightly?
Well, there's a whole bunch of them that are possible.
But they've not stepped
which
forward. They're not as out there as Gavin is, right?
Mhm.
Except for Jasmine and AOC and maybe Bernie.
You didn't mention the gay mayor.
Buttigieg, yeah, he's pretty good as well, but I think he's got less notoriety today than Jasmine or AOC or Bernie. Now, I think he's very smart. He's very good, but I think that he's not riding on that the way AOC and Jasmine and Bernie has for 40 years.
Well, I don't see Bernie running again,
No, he won't run. He won't run.
and I really don't see AOC running.
She will eventually.
She might eventually, but I don't see her running anytime soon. And Jasmine, that's a surprising one. I don't see her running.
She's very articulate and she's very smart.
Well, do the Democrats need a Ronald Reagan? Do we need to go somewhere else? What about what's his face in Texas? Who's on Shark Tank? Who's a Democrat?
The guy that ran 8 years ago, what was that? 9 years
Did he
ago?
run? There's been proposals about him. What's his name?
Began with B, right? Or somebody else.
Shark.
He's an American, but he took a Spanish sounding name.
Well, let's see.
He's
It's he owns the
extraordinary.
baseball team.
Oh,
Oh,
Mark
Oh,
Cuban. You're
Mark
talking
yeah,
about
Mark
Cuban.
Mark
Cuban.
Cuban?
Oh,
Yeah. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I think, we maybe need somebody like Ronald Reagan, somebody outside of politics, even though I don't like it. Um, but I've heard it. It's just too early.
well, so my view, uh, as a centrist, is that we know that no matter what we do, we have to get through the swing states. And we have to appeal to them, and the far left doesn't appeal to them. Centrists can,
So you mean like a Clinton, then is what we need.
like a
Somebody like
Clinton. The he kind of was a little further right than centrist until Hillary lost him his Congress, and he was forced to come back to the center. And then he did pretty good stuff. Sam.
I'm going to say it's actually simpler than that. I'm going to say it's not necessarily centrism versus progressive versus liberal. I'm going to say there are many millions of people. Okay, so forget the election rigging, which I think did happen, okay? But there are many people who simply did not vote for Kamala because she was a woman and she was not white.
Mhm.
We don't want to say that, but I think it's very true. I mean, just look at uh, somebody just came out yesterday and said, "Yeah, I didn't vote for her because she was, name your
You,
ethnicity."
you forgot that at her convention, at her anointing, the Palestinians applied to speak,
That's right. That's another big problem. That was another big problem.
and she denied them. And the very next day, the entire Muslim population said, "Fuck no, we're not voting for her."
Yep, I agree. Big problem. The
And
DNC is
and that
corrupt.
vote alone might have pushed her over.
Well, there is enough evidence of election rigging that I still think that is suspicious why it was not further audited.
At any rate, I'm going to have to ring off. It's time to fix breakfast.
Yeah, we've almost gone for 2 hours already. Anyway, Mark, this was an introduction to the kind of conversation we have on Saturdays and Sundays. We typically, when Jack and Eric are here, they're not here all the time, but we do have more technical details thrown into the table. But
This was a
almost
lot of fun.
always
I don't mean
there's
to interrupt, but it was
some.
a lot of fun.
Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but this was a lot of fun. I should have raised my hand. So I will be back. I have plans tonight, but I will be back next Saturday. And it's lovely to see you on video, Sam.
Yeah, good to reconnect. Just so
And
you know, unless I'm traveling or unless I'm really sick, this usually happens every Saturday and Sunday. And
Cool.
we have a core
Mark,
of maybe half a dozen people who are regular participants.
Mark, what was your graduate topic? What did you study?
Oh, I was a lunatic because I was very young and I thought I was going to be a professor. So, and my master's degree was on Nietzsche and rhetoric.
Uh,
I was very like, yeah, it was, I mean, point good for ethics, good for speaking, good for knowledge, but not for good for getting a job outside of education.
so let's talk about Ubermensch.
Yeah, I remember sitting at a table at a dinner table at a museum in Philadelphia once, surrounded by Chinese PhDs, and I asked them, um, "Why did you go into engineering?" And he said, "As philosophers, we wouldn't have a job."
True that.
All
Can
right.
I add
See
a
you all.
1 minute story about my son, whom I mentioned earlier? My son started UC Santa Cruz as an art major. And for 3.5 years, he was an art major. And then he came to me and said, all my friends are getting these internships. And they're with companies like software companies, law companies, pharmaceutical companies. But what am I going to do? Where can I get an internship with an art background? So I said, Nick, I'm glad you came to me with this question. I've been waiting 3.5 years for this. So I made him a deal. I said, I will pay for one more year, 5 total years of college, if you'll choose, unfortunately, a STEM or business degree as a minor.
Mhm.
So he took me up on it. He went 5 full years. He didn't just do a minor, he did a major. He did a double major in CS and art. And now he's
Wow.
working for Meta, and he's been there for 6 years, and he's doing better than I am. So
Good choice.
Phenomenal.
All right, guys.
nice to have you
Yeah,
join us,
nice
Mark.
seeing you.
Good to see you again, Eric and Jack and Kayla. Okay, bye for
Okay, have a
now.
good day, everybody.
Okay.